Block 1, the invitation, 1,000 words. You're standing in a London drawing room in December 1842, and everything smells like money. Mahogany, beeswax candles, the faint metallic tang of fresh ink on expensive stationery. Outside, the Thames is freezing over for the third time this decade. Inside, you're holding an invitation that will ruin your life. A fortnight in the country, it says. Christmas at Blackmore Hall, skating, hunting, roasted goose, a proper English holiday. You don't know it yet, but this invitation is a death sentence disguised as hospitality. The family sending it, the Ashworths, are textile magnates, new money trying to act like old money. They've just purchased a sprawling estate in the Pennines, that brutal range of hills in northern England where the wind has teeth and the snow doesn't melt. It accumulates like compound interest. They want to show off. They want to prove they belong. They want to host the most extravagant Christmas house party the upper class has ever seen. 20 guests, 7 courses per meal, a ballroom with chandeliers imported from France, ice sculptures, a string quartet, pheasant, venison, champagne smuggled past the taxman. This is wealth as performance art, and you, along with 19 other carefully selected members of the gentry, accept. Because you're bored, because London in winter is grey and damp and suffocating, because the idea of fresh country air and crackling fires and flirtation without chaperones sounds like exactly the escape you need. You pack 3 trunks, evening wear, riding boots, a leather-bound journal to document your witty observations. You bring your lady's maid or your valet because of course you do. Servants don't count as people in 1842. They're living furniture. The journey north takes 2 days by coach. The roads are frozen ruts. Your teeth rattle in your skull. The countryside looks like a steel engraving. All stark trees and grey skies and stone walls dividing fields that seem to go on forever. But when you finally arrive at Blackmore Hall on December 22nd, it's magnificent. The house is a Gothic revival fantasy. Turrets, stained glass, a grand staircase that spirals up 3 floors like something out of a fairy tale. Your room has a 4-poster bed with velvet curtains, a fireplace already roaring, and a view of the valley below. That night, there's a welcome dinner. Oysters, turtle soup, roast beef so rare it bleeds onto the china. The wine flows, the conversation sparkles. Someone plays Chopin on the pianoforte. A young widow laughs too loudly at a married man's joke. Outside, it begins to snow. Softly at first, just a dusting. Picturesque, romantic. Perfect for skating tomorrow, Mrs. Ashworth says, her face flushed with pride and claret. Everyone agrees. Everyone toasts to a perfect Christmas. And then the snow doesn't stop. By morning, it's 3 feet deep. By noon, 5. By evening, the roads are impassable. The telegraph lines, those fragile new inventions that connect you to the outside world, snap under the weight of ice. The coachman tries to leave. He makes it half a mile before his horses founder in a drift. He comes back on foot, frostbitten, silent. You're cut off, December 23rd, and you're already trapped. But no one panics. Not yet. This is an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. There's enough food for a siege. The cellars are stocked with wine, whiskey, preserved fruits, smoked meats, wheels of cheese the size of cartwheels. The kitchen has sacks of flour, sugar, butter, salt. We'll wait it out, Mr. Ashworth announces at dinner. A week at most, the thaw always comes. The thaw does not come. The snow keeps falling. Not dramatically. Not in a single apocalyptic storm. Just steadily, relentlessly, like the world has decided to bury you alive 1 inch at a time. December 24th, Christmas Eve. The house is still festive. Evergreen boughs decorate the banisters. Someone organizes charades. The children hang stockings. There's mulled wine and mince pies and a Yule log burning in the great hall. But outside, the drifts are now 10 feet high. The windows on the ground floor are half buried. The world beyond the glass is a white void. And deep in the kitchen, the head cook, a grim woman named Mrs. Blackwell who survived 2 husbands and the Irish potato famine, is doing mathematics that don't add up. 20 guests, 15 servants, the Ashworth family of 6. That's 41 mouths. She'd planned for 2 weeks. maybe 3 if she stretched. Not 3 months. Not 90 days of winter that won't end. Mrs. Blackwell doesn't say anything yet. She's a professional, but she takes inventory. She counts the hams, the barrels of apples, the jars of preserves. She calculates calories and portion sizes and rationing strategies, and she realizes, with the cold certainty of someone who's lived through famine, that they're going to starve. Not immediately, but eventually. Unless the snow stops, unless rescue comes, unless someone does something. But who? And what? You're sitting in the library after dinner, reading by candlelight when you hear it. A sound that doesn't belong. A crack, sharp and final, like a bone breaking. You go to the window. In the valley below, an oak tree, ancient, massive, older than the house, has split under the weight of ice. It falls in slow motion, a giant toppling, and when it hits the ground, the snow explodes upward in a white cloud that doesn't settle. Someone behind you whispers, "How long can snow fall?" No one answers, because no one knows. And that night, as you lie in your velvet-curtained bed, you hear the wind howling through the turrets like something alive and hungry. Outside, the blizzard intensifies. Inside, the clock strikes midnight. Christmas Day, 1842. And you've just entered the longest nightmare of your life. If this feels too real, subscribe before it gets worse. Trust me, it does. Block 2. The Feast Before the Famine. 1,000 words. Christmas morning, and everyone pretends this is fine. There's a chapel service. Hymns sung in the cold stone room attached to the east wing. The vicar, trapped here just like everyone else, delivers a sermon about patience and divine providence that lands like a lead balloon. His voice echoes, his breath fogs. The stained glass windows are frosted over from the inside. But afterward there's breakfast, a proper Victorian Christmas breakfast. Ham, bacon, kippers, eggs poached in butter, toast with marmalade, porridge with cream, coffee and chocolate and preserved fruits. The dining room table is a monument to excess, and everyone eats like it's their last meal. It isn't, but it's the last good one. Mr. Ashworth stands at the head of the table, flushed with brandy and false confidence, and makes a toast. To unexpected adventures, he booms, to making the best of things, to Christmas at Blackmore Hall. Everyone raises their glasses, everyone drinks, but you notice something. The servants aren't smiling. Mrs. Blackwell, standing in the doorway to the kitchen, has the expression of a general surveying a battlefield she knows she's going to lose. After breakfast, the men gather in the smoking room. Cigars, port, talk of business and politics, and whether this snow is unprecedented or just unusually inconvenient. Someone suggests sending a man on foot to the nearest village. It's only 6 miles. 6 miles through 10-foot drifts, the coachman says quietly. He's still bandaging his frostbitten fingers. "Oh, you'll be dead in an hour." The room goes silent. One of the younger men, a cavalry officer on leave, bristles. "Surely you're exaggerating." The coachman looks at him. "Try it, sir. I'll wait here." No one tries it. The women, meanwhile, are in the drawing room, embroidering and pretending this is all terribly romantic. "Like something out of a Gothic novel," one of them says, tittering. "Except in novels," the widow replies, her voice dry as bone. The heroine escapes. Outside, the snow is now 14 feet deep in places. The drifts have sculpted themselves into strange shapes, waves, cliffs, architectural impossibilities. The wind carves them constantly. Nothing is stable. The landscape rewrites itself every hour, and it's cold. Not the cold you're used to, not London cold where you can retreat indoors and everything's fine. This is cold that seeps through stone walls, cold that makes the fires seem pathetic, cold that settles into your bones and won't leave. The house has 37 fireplaces. All of them are burning constantly. And on December 26th, the head groundskeeper comes to Mr. Ashworth with news. They're running out of firewood. "Running out," Ashworth repeats, incredulous. "We have acres of woodland. Buried under 12 feet of snow, sir. Can't get to it. Can't cut it even if we could reach it." There's a pause. "How long?" "If we ration, month, maybe 6 weeks." Ashworth's face does something complicated. "And if we don't ration?" 2 weeks. So they start burning furniture. Not immediately, not dramatically. But that afternoon, some of the servants quietly remove a few chairs from the unused guest rooms, a writing desk, a decorative table. They chop them up in the courtyard and carry the pieces to the fireplaces. No one mentions it at dinner, but you notice. Everyone notices. The house is eating itself to stay warm. That night the temperature drops to -15°C. Inside, with every fireplace roaring, it's barely above freezing in the unoccupied rooms. Your breath fogs. The water in the wash basins has a skim of ice by morning, and the food is changing. Breakfast on the 27th is smaller, thinner. The bacon is gone. The ham is portioned. The eggs are scrambled to make them stretch. There's bread, but it's yesterday's bread and there's only one slice per person. Rationing, Mrs. Blackwell announces, her voice flat. Until the thaw. No one argues, but you see the way people look at their plates, the way they calculate, the way they eat slowly trying to make it last. The children don't understand yet. They're playing in the nursery, oblivious. But the adults are doing math. 41 people, 3 meals a day. How long? How long can you stretch a larder designed for 2 weeks into 2 months? Into 3. By the 28th, there's a routine. Wake. Dress in layers. Breakfast. Small. Silent. The men play cards. The women read. Everyone avoids talking about the snow, which makes it the only thing anyone's thinking about. The servants are quieter now. They move through the house like ghosts. They're eating less than the guests, and everyone knows it, and no one says anything. On the 29th, one of the kitchen maids faints. Malnutrition, the housemaid whispers. She's been giving her food to her younger brother, who's the stable boy. Mrs. Blackwell sends them both to bed with strict orders to eat their full rations, but you see her face afterward. She's counting, always counting. Always. And that night, at dinner, which is now just one course, a thin stew of vegetables and mysterious meat that might be rabbit or might be something else, someone asks the question everyone's been avoiding. What if the snow doesn't stop? Silence. It has to stop, Mrs. Ashworth says, her voice too bright. It's almost January. January is always milder. Not in the Pennines, the coachman mutters. Another silence. You look around the table. 20 guests who came here for champagne and charades. Now sitting in a freezing dining room, eating stew with no seconds, watching the candles burn down because candles are rationed too. This was supposed to be a vacation. This was supposed to be fun. Outside, the wind screams. The snow keeps falling. And you realize with a clarity that's almost painful that you might die here. Not from cold, not from accident, from hunger. Slow, creeping, inevitable hunger. The kind that doesn't kill you quickly. The kind that takes weeks. The kind that makes you weak first, then confused, then desperate. You look at the person next to you, a banker from Leeds, soft hands, soft belly, and you think, how many calories is a human body? You don't say it, but you think it, and you're not the only one. Block 3, the Library Council, 1,000 words, New Year's Eve, and no one celebrates. There's no champagne, no toast, no countdown. Just another meal of thin soup and stale bread, eaten in silence, followed by everyone retreating to their cold rooms to sleep under every blanket they own. You're dreaming of food when someone knocks on your door at 2 a.m. Meeting, a voice hisses. Library now. You dress in the dark. The hallways are ice. Your candle barely cuts the blackness. When you reach the library, 8 people are already there. The cavalry officer, the widow, a Manchester industrialist, a doctor, 2 lawyers, the vicar, and Mrs. Blackwell. The doors close. Someone locks them. We need to talk, the doctor says, about what's actually happening here. He's thin. They're all thin now. It's been 10 days and everyone's lost weight. Faces are sharper. Eyes are hollower. The cold makes it worse. Your body burning calories just to stay alive. The snow isn't stopping, the widow says. Her name is Eleanor, and she's the smartest person in the house. I've been keeping records. Snowfall per day. Temperature, wind patterns, this isn't normal weather, this is a climatic event. A what? someone asks. A statistical anomaly, the kind that happens once a century, maybe less. The industrialist, a man named Hargrove, leans forward. How long? Eleanor doesn't flinch. If the pattern holds, March, possibly April. Someone swears. Someone else laughs, high and panicked. We'll be dead by then, one of the lawyers says quietly. Mrs. Blackwell nods. On current rations, we have food for 6 more weeks, maybe 7 if I stretch it. After that, she doesn't finish. The room absorbs this. So we need more food, the cavalry officer says. Like it's simple, like he's solving a logistics problem. From where? The doctor snaps. The village is 6 miles through impassable snow. The nearest town is 20. We're completely isolated. Then we hunt, the officer insists. There are deer, rabbits, game birds. In this? Hargrove gestures at the frosted window. You can't see 10 feet, you can't track anything. And if you go out there, you'll freeze before you find anything. Then what do you suggest? Silence. That's when you speak up. You've been quiet until now, listening, calculating. We need a priority system. Everyone looks at you. Food is finite, you continue. People are not equal. Some of us contribute more than others. Some of us need more calories to survive. We need to decide who gets fed first. The vicar looks horrified. You're suggesting we, let people starve? I'm suggesting we make rational choices. If we all eat equally, we all die equally. If we prioritize survival, whose survival? Eleanor cuts in. Her voice is sharp. The men, the wealthy, the young, the useful, you say bluntly. The strong, the ones who can work. The doctor, the servants who maintain the house, the groundskeeper who can potentially get us out of here. And the rest, the vicar demands. The children, the elderly, the infirm. You don't answer, you don't have to. Mrs. Blackwell speaks, her voice low and cold. I've been through famine. In Ireland. I know how this ends. You want to know the truth? The children die first, they always do. Their bodies can't sustain themselves on scraps. Then the old, then the weak, then everyone else in order of who can hold out longest. That's monstrous, the vicar whispers. That's reality. The meeting dissolves into argument. Moral philosophy versus survival calculus. The officer wants a hierarchy. The lawyers want fairness. The doctor wants medical triage. The vicar wants trust in God. Eleanor wants data. We need to know exactly what we have, she says, cutting through the noise. Every scrap of food, every resource. Then we calculate. Calories per person per day to maintain function. Minimum viable population. Margin of error. You sound like you're planning a war, someone mutters. I am, she replies. A war against winter, and winter doesn't take prisoners. They talk for hours. By the time you leave, dawn is breaking, though you can barely tell through the snow-covered windows. The decision is made. Inventory everything. Ration strictly. Hope for the best. But privately, quietly, alliances are forming. The officer and the industrialist corner you afterward. We need to stick together, Hargrove says. The strong ones, when things get worse, they're already worse, you interrupt. No, they're going to get worse. And when they do, we need to make sure we're the ones who survive. You don't commit, but you don't refuse, because you're thinking the same thing, everyone is. January 2nd. The inventory is complete. Mrs. Blackwell presents the numbers at dinner. They're grim. If we maintain current rations, we have food until February 15th. After that, nothing. And if we reduce rations? February 28th. But by then, people will be too weak to function. Someone asks about the wine, the brandy. Can they be rationed as calories? Alcohol without food accelerates starvation, the doctor says. It'll kill you faster. So they drain the cellars anyway, not for nutrition, for oblivion. That night you hear crying from several rooms. Quiet, muffled, desperate. By January 5th, the first person tries to leave. It's one of the younger guests, a banker's son, 23, convinced he can make it to the village. He takes supplies, warm clothes, a compass. The coachman tries to stop him. You'll die out there. I'll die in here, the young man replies. He leaves at dawn. The servants watch from the windows. He makes it 200 yards before he disappears into a drift. They see him flailing, sinking, thrashing, and then nothing. 3 men go after him. It takes 4 hours to find his body. He's frozen solid, eyes wide, mouth open. They drag him back and bury him in the snow because the ground is frozen solid. No one talks about him at dinner, but everyone's thinking the same thing. He was right. We're all going to die in here. The difference is, he died trying. The rest of us are dying slowly. Block 4. The cake discovery. 1,000 words. January 15th, and the house smells like despair. It's a specific smell. Unwashed bodies. Damp wool. Smoke from fires that burn furniture carved by artisans who've been dead for a century. Desperation has an odor, and you're breathing it every second. The meals are a joke now. Breakfast is a cup of weak tea and a single piece of toast, if you're lucky. Lunch doesn't exist. Dinner is a bowl of something Mrs. Blackwell refuses to identify, served with a side of silence. People are weak, not dying yet, but weakening. Stairs become mountains. Conversations become exhausting. Sleep becomes the only escape, except you're too cold and too hungry to sleep properly, so you just lie there, teeth chattering, dreaming of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding and things you'll probably never taste again. The children have stopped playing. They just sit there, eyes too large for their faces, watching the adults with something that might be understanding or might be accusation. And then Mrs. Blackwell finds the cake. She's doing another inventory, her 5th or 6th, you've lost count, searching every corner of the vast cellars beneath the kitchen. These aren't normal cellars. Blackmore Hall was built on the foundations of something older, medieval maybe, and the storage spaces branch out like catacombs. Cold rooms, wine cellars, larders, spaces that haven't been properly catalogued in decades. She's in the farthest corner, the part that's always been storage for storage, when she finds a locked door. Old. Oak, the kind of lock that requires a key that's probably been lost since Victoria took the throne. She breaks it open with a hammer. Inside she finds them. Cakes. 57 wedding cakes to be precise. Fruit cakes. Preserved in alcohol and sugar and thyme. Stacked on shelves, wrapped in cloth, sealed in tins. Each one weighing between 5 and 10 pounds. They're from the estate's previous owners. A family that apparently provided wedding cakes for every tenant, every servant, every vaguely important local event for 3 generations. A tradition that ended when the Ashworths bought the property, but the cakes remained. Forgotten, abandoned, preserved. Mrs. Blackwell stands there, holding her candle, staring at approximately 500 pounds of edible history. She doesn't tell anyone immediately. First, she tests one, cuts a slice, examines it, smells it, tastes it. It's fine. Dense, sweet, alcoholic. The dried fruits are intact. The nuts are still good. The sugar has crystallized in places, but it's edible. More than edible. Each pound of fruitcake is roughly 2,000 calories. She does the math in her head. 41 people, 500 pounds of cake. That's roughly 12 pounds per person, 24,000 calories each. At survival rations, 200 calories per day. That's 20 days per person. 20 days. It doesn't sound like much. But when you're staring at death in mid-February, 20 extra days is the difference between extinction and possible survival. She brings the news to the Midnight Council. That's what you call it now. The group that meets in the library after everyone else is asleep. 10 people who've quietly become the decision makers, the ones who deal with the ugly realities. Eleanor does the calculations properly. If we combine the remaining food stores with the cakes and drop rations to absolute minimum survival levels, we can last until March 15th, maybe the 20th. Will the snow stop by then? The officer asks. I don't know, Eleanor admits, but it's our only chance. The vicar is conflicted. This feels like providence, like we've been saved. We haven't been saved, Mrs. Blackwell says flatly. We've been given a stay of execution, that's all. The next morning, at breakfast, Mrs. Blackwell makes an announcement. She doesn't explain where the cakes came from. She doesn't explain how many there are. She just says, "New rations begin today. You'll be eating primarily cake, fruit cake. It's nutritionally adequate. It will keep you alive." Someone laughs. "Cake for breakfast?" "Cake for everything," Mrs. Blackwell replies. "Breakfast, dinner, possibly lunch if you're working. That's what we have. That's what you'll eat." And that's how it begins. The Great Cake Diet of 1843. At first, it's almost funny. Cake for breakfast feels like a child's fantasy. Sweet, indulgent, absurd. But fruitcake isn't light sponge. It's dense and heavy and cloying. Each piece sits in your stomach like a stone. The alcohol content, brandy or rum, depending on the cake, makes your head swim on an empty stomach. By the second day, people are sick of it. By the third day, people are literally sick. The richness, the sweetness, the lack of variety, it's nauseating. But there's nothing else. So you eat it, every meal. The same taste, the same texture, the same sticky sweetness that coats your teeth and tongue and throat. You dream about vegetables, about salt, about anything that isn't sweet. By January 20th, the house has settled into a new rhythm. Wake, cake, sit by the fire. Cake, sleep, repeat. Conversations have stopped. People just exist side by side, too tired and too hungry to engage. The cold is constant now. Even the warmest rooms hover around 40 degrees. Your fingers are numb. Your feet ache. Chilblains are universal. The children eat their cake and cry. The adults eat their cake and stare at nothing. And outside, the snow continues, not as heavily as before, but steadily. Always. The drifts are now 20 feet high in places. The house looks like it's being swallowed. The upper windows are the only ones still clear. On January 25th, the first person refuses to eat the cake. One of the older guests, a retired magistrate. He just pushes his plate away and shakes his head. "I'd rather starve," he says quietly. 3 days later, he does. His body is wrapped in sheets and placed in one of the unused wings, where it's cold enough to prevent decay. There's no discussion of burial. The ground is frozen. The snow is impassable. He'll lie there until the thaw, along with the young man who tried to escape, and anyone else who doesn't make it. The house is becoming a mausoleum. Block 5, the horse trial, 1,000 words. February 10th, and they're going to kill the horses. The decision comes at breakfast. Not a group discussion, not a vote. Just Mr. Ashworth standing at the head of the table, looking like a corpse himself and announcing, "We're slaughtering the horses today for food." The silence is absolute. Mrs. Ashworth makes a sound like a wounded animal. One of the children starts crying. The vicar opens his mouth to protest, then closes it. "What's the point?" The cavalry officer nods approvingly. "Should have done it weeks ago." The coachman, whose horses they are really, just stares at his empty plate. His face is blank. You can't tell if he's relieved or devastated. They do it in the courtyard behind the stables, away from the house, away from the children. But sound travels in the cold, and everyone hears the screaming. Because horses know. Somehow, they know. It takes 4 men to hold the first one down. The officer does the killing because he's the only one with military experience. He uses a pistol. 1 shot to the head. The sound cracks across the valley like the world breaking. The horse drops. 200 pounds of muscle and bone and terror. And then the butchering begins. It takes hours. The men don't know what they're doing. They're not farmers or hunters. They're bankers and lawyers and gentlemen who've never killed anything larger than a pheasant on a hunting party. They hack at the carcass with kitchen knives and handsaws. Blood turns the snow pink, then red, then black as it freezes. Mrs. Blackwell supervises. She's the only one who's butchered large animals before, back in Ireland, before the famine, before everything. She shows them how to find the joints, how to separate the cuts, how to salvage every scrap. Nothing is wasted. The meat, the organs, the bones for broth. Even the hide, stripped away and saved for something. Leather. Insulation. No one's quite sure yet. By nightfall there's horse meat hanging in the cold storage. Dark red. Lean. Strange. That night's dinner is the first non-cake meal in 3 weeks. Horse steaks, grilled over the fire. No seasoning left except salt. The meat is tough and gamey and tastes faintly of desperation, but it's not cake, and for that some people weep with relief. You eat yours slowly. The texture is wrong. The flavor is wrong. This animal was transportation 12 hours ago. Now it's dinner. Across from you a woman is gagging. She can't do it. Can't eat the horse she used to feed apples to, back when apples existed, back when the world was normal. Others eat ravenously. The officer has seconds. Hargrove has thirds. The protein, the fat, the break from sugar. It's like coming alive again. But there's a calculation happening. A dark one. 4 horses. Average weight, 1,000 pounds. Edible weight after butchering, roughly 500 pounds per horse. 2,000 pounds total. 41 people. That's about 50 pounds per person. At normal consumption, that's maybe 2 weeks of meat. But these aren't normal circumstances. You can't eat 50 pounds of meat in 2 weeks when you're starving. Your body can't process it. So it'll stretch longer, 3 weeks, maybe 4, which means by March 1st the horses will be gone, and the cake will be gone, and there will be nothing left but each other. Eleanor is doing the same math. You see it in her face across the table. The second horse is killed on February 12th, then the third on February 14th, then the fourth on February 16th. Each death is the same. The screaming, the butchering, the blood on snow, the meat hung in the cold room, the desperate gratitude at dinner. By February 18th, all 4 horses are dead. The stable stands empty. The courtyard is stained with frozen blood that won't thaw until spring. If spring ever comes. The meat helps. Temporarily. People regain small amounts of strength. The protein makes a difference. For a few days, the house feels almost normal again. But the math doesn't change. Even with careful rationing, the horse meat will run out by early March. The cake is almost gone, and the snow is still falling. On February 20th, someone gets sick, then 2 more, then 5. Food poisoning, the doctor thinks. Or maybe the horse meat was tainted. Or maybe their bodies are so weak that any change in diet causes problems. People are vomiting, having diarrhea. Losing what little nutrition they're getting, the doctor does what he can, fluids, rest, prayers, but 3 of them die within a week. 4 bodies now, then 5, then 6. The cold wing where the dead are stored is getting crowded. The wrapped bodies lie in rows like cordwood, preserved by the cold, waiting for spring, waiting for burial, waiting for recognition that they mattered. By February 25th, the mood in the house has changed completely. This isn't temporary anymore. This isn't an adventure. This is a death sentence playing out in slow motion. People stop pretending, stop being polite, stop caring about social conventions. Arguments erupt constantly. Over food, over fire, over nothing. Someone steals another person's blanket. There's a fist fight. The vicar tries to intervene and gets hit. His nose breaks. Blood everywhere. No one helps him clean it up. The social order is collapsing. The servants have stopped serving. They eat separately. Sleep in locked rooms. Form their own alliances. Everyone knows what's coming. When the food runs out completely, the strong will take from the weak. The living will take from the dead. The pretense of civilization will evaporate like morning frost. On February 27th, the officer is found standing in the cold wing, staring at the bodies. He has a knife in his hand. Eleanor confronts him. "What are you doing?" "Making calculations," he replies. His voice is flat, empty. 6 bodies. Average weight maybe 120 pounds, edible weight perhaps 40 pounds each. That's 240 pounds. For 35 people, about 7 pounds per person. Maybe a week of survival. Maybe more. You're talking about eating them. I'm talking about living. Eleanor's hand moves to her pocket. She's carrying his pistol, the one she stole days ago, just in case. "No," she says simply. "You can't stop me forever. I can stop you today. That's enough." They stare at each other. Predator and prey. except neither knows which is which. Finally, the officer backs down. He leaves the cold wing, returns to his room. But everyone knows he'll be back, when he's desperate enough, when survival instinct overrides everything else. It's only a matter of time. Block 6, the fever ward, 1,000 words. February 28th, and disease arrives like an uninvited guest. It starts with one of the kitchen maids. She's been weak for days, they all have, but this morning she can't get out of bed. Fever, chills. A cough that sounds like tearing fabric. The doctor examines her in her tiny room off the scullery. It's barely warmer than outside. Her breath fogs. Her skin is grey. Pneumonia, he announces. Possibly consumption. Hard to say without proper equipment. Can you treat it? Mrs. Blackwell asks. He looks at her. They both know the answer. I can make her comfortable. Translation, she's going to die, but she doesn't die alone. By March 2nd, 3 more servants are sick, then 2 guests. Then a child, Mrs. Ashworth's youngest daughter, 7 years old, burning with fever. The house transforms into a plague ward overnight. The sick are moved to the East Wing, the coldest part of the house, ironically, the best place to isolate them. Quarantine, the doctor calls it, though everyone knows it's really just a place to die away from the healthy. Not that healthy means much anymore. You're all malnourished, exhausted, cold weakened. Your immune systems are barely functioning. The slightest infection could kill any of you. The doctor does what he can. He has some laudanum left, some willow bark for fever. Blankets, hot water. That's it. Victorian medicine in a crisis is mostly just watching people die with slightly less suffering. Mrs. Ashworth sits by her daughter's bedside day and night. She doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, just holds the child's hand and sings lullabies in a voice like breaking glass. It's not fair, she whispers to you when you bring her tea. We came here for Christmas, for joy. How did it become this? You don't answer, because the answer is obvious and terrible. This is what happens when you ignore nature, when you assume you're in control, when you throw a party in the Pennines in winter and think the world will bend to your convenience. Nature doesn't care about your convenience. Nature is the snow that keeps falling, the cold that keeps seeping, the hunger that keeps gnawing, and now the fever that keeps spreading. By March 4th, 8 people are sick. The East Wing sounds like a battlefield hospital. Coughing, moaning, delirious muttering. Someone prays loudly in Latin. Someone else screams about demons in the snow. The healthy, what's left of you, avoid the East Wing entirely. Not because you don't care, because you're terrified. Terror is rational now. This isn't melodrama. This is mathematics. 41 people started this nightmare. 2 are already dead from other causes. 8 are dying from fever. That leaves 31, and the food is almost gone. The last of the horse meat is served on March 5th. Tough, stringy, but still better than cake, which is also almost gone. Mrs. Blackwell estimates 3 more days of cake, maybe 4 if people stick to rations. No one's sticking to rations. The theft has become constant, blatant. People have stopped pretending. You see them sneaking into the kitchen at night, grabbing whatever they can find, stuffing it into their pockets. There are fights now, actual physical fights over scraps. The officer, before he got sick, broke someone's nose yesterday over a piece of cake the size of your fist. The vicar tried to intervene and got shoved into a wall. Civilization is a thin coat of paint, and you're watching it peel away in real time. Eleanor finds you in the library on March 6th. She looks skeletal. You probably do too. We need to talk, she says, privately. You go to your room. She locks the door behind her. People are going to start dying soon, she says without preamble. Not from disease, from starvation. Another week, maybe 2, and we'll be too weak to function. I know. So we need a plan. What kind of plan? She pulls out a paper. It's covered in calculations, names, numbers. There are 31 of us left. 13 are strong enough to potentially survive until the thaw. The rest are too weak, too sick, too young, or too old. You understand immediately. You want to choose. I want to survive, and if that means making choices, it means murder, Eleanor. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about triage. If we can't save everyone, we save who we can. And who decides who's savable? We do. You stare at her. This woman who 3 months ago was drinking champagne and laughing at charades, now she's proposing organized killing disguised as medical necessity. The officer is thinking the same thing, she continues. So is Hargrove. They're forming a group. The strong ones, the ones who'll do what needs to be done. And you want me to join them? I want you to help me stop them, because they won't stop at 13. They'll keep going until there's only them, and then they'll turn on each other. She's right. You know she's right. So what do you suggest? We get to the food first. We hide it. We control distribution. We keep everyone weak enough that they can't revolt, but strong enough that they don't die. We stretch what's left until the snow stops. That's still choosing who lives and dies. Yes, but it's choosing based on need, not strength. It's keeping everyone alive as long as possible, instead of sacrificing the weak to feed the strong. You're quiet for a long time. When do we start? Tonight. That night, while the house sleeps, you and Eleanor and Mrs. Blackwell raid the larder. Every scrap that's left, every crumb. You hide it in places only you know, the old servants' quarters. Behind loose panels in the library, under floorboards in unused bedrooms, you work in darkness, in silence, moving like thieves in your own prison. By dawn, the kitchen is empty, completely empty. And when people come for breakfast, there's nothing. The reaction is immediate: panic, anger, accusations. "Where's the food?" someone screams at Mrs. Blackwell. "Gone," she says flatly. "Stolen or consumed. It doesn't matter which. There's nothing left." "You're lying. Search the kitchen yourself." They do. They tear it apart. Cupboards, pantries, storage rooms. They find nothing. Because there's nothing to find. The officer grabs Mrs. Blackwell by the arm. "Where is the food?" "There is no food," she repeats. He hits her. An open-handed slap that snaps her head sideways. She doesn't cry out, doesn't fall, just looks at him with eyes like frozen stones. "There is no food," she says again. That's when the riot starts. Not a riot, really. More like a violent unraveling. People screaming, shoving, tearing through the house looking for hidden caches. They break furniture, rip up carpets, smash through walls. They find nothing, because Eleanor is good at hiding things. By afternoon, exhaustion wins. People collapse in corners, too weak to keep searching. And there's still no food. Block 7. The hidden cache, 1,000 words. March 7th. And you're going to have to reveal the food. Not because you want to. Because if you don't, the officer will start butchering corpses by noon. He's already gone to the cold wing twice. Standing there, looking at the wrapped bodies, calculating. You see it in his face, the hunger, the justification, the readiness to cross a line that can't be uncrossed. Eleanor agrees. We have to give them something, enough to keep them human for a few more days. And after that? She doesn't answer. You wait until morning, when people are at their weakest. When the hunger is a physical presence, a beast crouching in everyone's stomach, clawing to get out. You stand in the main hall, Mrs. Blackwell beside you, Eleanor slightly behind. "There's food," you announce. The reaction is instantaneous. Heads snap up, eyes focus. For a moment, everyone looks alive again. "We found a cache," you continue, the lie smooth on your tongue. "In one of the old storage rooms. Not much, but enough for another week. Maybe 2 if we're careful." "Where?" the officer demands, already standing, already moving toward you. "Doesn't matter where. What matters is we distribute it fairly. Small portions, survival rations only." "Show us," Hargrove insists. "Show us the cache." "No." The word hangs in the air like a challenge. "If we show you," Eleanor says, stepping forward, "people will fight over it. People will steal. People will die. We've seen it happen. So we're taking control. We'll distribute. You'll eat. That's the deal." "That's not a deal," the officer says quietly. "That's tyranny. Call it what you want, but it's the only way anyone survives." For a moment you think he's going to attack. His hand moves toward his belt, where he still keeps his pistol. You see his fingers twitch. But Mrs. Blackwell speaks, her voice sharp as broken glass. You want to shoot us? Fine. But you won't find the food, and you'll starve 3 days faster than the rest of us. Stalemate. The officer backs down. Barely. Fine. But this better be real. It's real. That night, you distribute the first portions. Small. Barely enough to quiet the hunger. Stale bread, a handful of dried beans, a piece of hard cheese covered in mold that you scrape away, some preserved apples that taste like sadness. But it's food, real food, not cake, not horse, not human flesh. People cry when they eat. Great heaving sobs of relief. Someone kisses their piece of bread before consuming it. The children eat so fast they choke. You watch them, these people who arrived in silk and jewels and arrogance, now reduced to animals grateful for scraps, and you feel nothing, the part of you that would feel pity or horror or guilt. It's gone, starved away. All that's left is calculation and survival. March 8th. The house is quieter. The food has brought you peace, temporary, fragile, but peace nonetheless. People stay in their rooms, conserving energy. Conversations are whispered. No one has strength for conflict. The sick in the East Wing are dying faster now. 2 more servants, an elderly guest. Their deaths are quiet, unremarked. The survivors barely notice. 9 bodies in the cold wing now. You check on them daily, making sure the officer hasn't violated them. Making sure they're still frozen, still preserved, still off limits. So far they are, but you see the way he looks at them, the way others look at them, the calculation, the hunger. It's only a matter of time. Eleanor is keeping records. Dates, deaths, food distribution. She writes everything in a leather journal she found in the library. Someone should know what happened here, she explains. When they find us, whether we're alive or dead, someone should know. Why? Because if we don't document it, people will make up stories. They'll romanticize it, turn it into a tragedy instead of what it really is. Which is a case study in how quickly civilization collapses when comfort disappears. She's not wrong. On March 9th, someone tries to find the hidden cache. You hear them in the night, moving through hallways, testing floorboards, searching. You don't confront them, you just listen. Let them exhaust themselves. They find nothing. Because Eleanor is smarter than them. Always has been. But the attempt means people are getting desperate again. The food you gave them is already running out. Bodies metabolizing every crumb. Hunger returning like a tide. You have maybe 5 more days of rations. Then nothing. The snow is lighter now. Not gone, not stopped, but lighter. The storms are less frequent. The temperature is rising, barely but rising. -10 instead of -15. March is coming, and with it, maybe possibly the thaw. But will it come fast enough? The doctor doesn't think so. He tells you privately in the library, his voice barely a whisper. Even if the snow stops tomorrow, we're too weak to travel, too malnourished to survive the journey to civilization. We need at least 2 weeks of proper food to regain enough strength, and we don't have 2 weeks of anything. So what do? We hope, he says, and we prepare for the worst. What's the worst? He looks toward the East Wing, toward the dying, toward the dead in the cold storage. The worst is that we become what we're afraid of, that we survive. But the cost of surviving destroys what we were. You understand. He's talking about cannibalism, about murder, about the things people do when every other option is gone. Would you ask, if it meant living? He's quiet for a long time. I don't know. I'd like to think I wouldn't, that I'd die first, die clean. But hunger does things to you. I've seen it before in India. During the famines, people become different. Not evil, just different. The body takes over. The instinct to survive becomes louder than morality. That's not an answer. Because there isn't one. Not until you're there. Not until it's your choice. That night you dream of food. Vivid. Cruel. You're at a banquet. Tables laden with roasted meats and fresh vegetables and bread still warm from the oven. You eat and eat and eat. It tastes like heaven. Like memory. Like everything you've lost. And then you wake up. Cold. Hungry. in a dark room that smells like decay and desperation. The dream feels like torture. Block 8. The Turning, 1,000 words. March 10th, and the officer is dying. Not from the gunshot wound Eleanor gave him weeks ago. That healed poorly, but it healed. This is something else, an infection, a fever. His body finally giving up after weeks of starvation and cold and rage. He's delirious now, thrashing in his bed, calling out orders to soldiers who aren't there, fighting battles that ended decades ago in India. Sometimes he screams, sometimes he weeps. Mostly he just burns. The doctor checks on him once. "How long?" Eleanor asks. "Hours, maybe a day." "Should we waste water on him?" The question is clinical, practical, not cruel, just realistic. Water is precious, fire is precious, everything is precious when you're dying by inches. The doctor considers. No, let him go. He was going to eat the dead anyway. I'm not sorry he's dying. No one is. The officer dies on March 11th at dawn. His last words are, "I'm so hungry." They all are. Everyone is. Hunger is the only constant now, the only reality. Everything else, memory, hope, personality, has been burned away. What's left is just the animal need to consume, to survive, to continue existing even when existence is agony. 10 bodies in the cold wing now, 31 people left, and absolutely no food. You distributed the last of the hidden cash yesterday. A few dried beans per person, a crust of moldy bread, some candle wax that people tried to eat and immediately vomited back up. Now there's nothing. The kitchen is empty. The cellars are empty. The hidden caches are empty. Every scrap has been found, divided, consumed, and the snow is still falling, not heavily, but enough. Enough to keep the drifts impassable. Enough to keep you trapped. Enough to ensure that rescue, if it comes, won't come in time. March 12th. No one gets out of bed. There's no point. No food to eat. No strength to move. No reason to pretend anymore. You lie in your room and listen to the house, the wind, the creaking, the occasional cough or moan from other rooms, the silence where conversation used to be. This is what dying sounds like. Not dramatic, not quick, just a slow fading, a gradual dimming. The world getting quieter and colder and further away. Eleanor comes to your room around noon. She can barely walk. She has to lean against the doorframe. "It's over," she says simply. "I know. We tried. We did. Was it enough?" You don't answer, because it wasn't. 11 people are dead. 20 more are dying. The 30 survivors, if you can call them survivors, will carry this trauma forever. Nothing you did was enough. Nothing anyone could have done would have been enough. "What happens now?" you ask. Eleanor slides down the wall, sits on the floor, too tired to stand. "We wait. Either rescue comes or we die. Those are the only options left." "How long?" "Until we die." "Days. Maybe a week if we're unlucky. The human body can survive a surprisingly long time on nothing. It just won't be pleasant. None of this has been pleasant." She laughs. It sounds like breaking glass. No, it really hasn't. You're quiet for a while. Just existing. Just breathing. Even that feels like effort now. "Eleanor?" "Yes?" "If we die, will anyone know what really happened here?" She pats the journal in her pocket. "I've written everything. Hidden copies in 3 different places. If they find the bodies, they'll find the truth." "Will they believe it?" "Does it matter? It'll be true whether they believe it or not." "Fair point. That night, something changes. You hear it first. A sound that doesn't belong. Not wind. Not the house settling. Something else. Voices, distant, faint. Calling. At first you think you're hallucinating. Hunger does that. Makes you hear things, see things. Your brain trying to fill the void with something, anything, even if it's not real. But then you hear it again. Louder. Closer. "Hello, is anyone there?" You try to move, can't. Your body won't cooperate, your muscles have atrophied. Your blood sugar is too low, you're too weak to stand. But you hear Eleanor in the hallway, dragging herself, making noise, banging on walls. "Here!" she screams. Her voice is raw, barely human. "We're here! Help us!" More voices outside, shouting, digging sounds. The crack of shovels hitting ice. They're here. After 81 days. After 10 deaths. After eating horses and leather and wallpaper and things you'll never admit to anyone. Rescue has finally arrived. The door breaks open. 6 men. Strong, healthy, carrying supplies. They stop in the doorway. Stare at what they find. You see yourself through their eyes. Skeletal figures, hollow-eyed, barely alive. The house destroyed, furniture burned, walls stripped. The smell of death and desperation everywhere. "My God," one of them whispers. "What happened here?" No one answers. Because how do you explain? How do you describe what you became, what you did, what you survived? You can't. You just take the bread they offer and eat it slowly. So slowly. Because your body can't process real food anymore. Your stomach has shrunk. Your digestive system has shut down. Too much too fast will kill you. The rescuers move through the house, finding the survivors, carrying them to the main hall, setting up a medical station, distributing small portions of food, warm broth. Soft bread, things that won't kill fragile, starving bodies. They find the cold wing, the 10 corpses wrapped in sheets. They don't say anything, don't judge, just document, record, begin planning evacuations. You sit in the main hall, wrapped in a real blanket, holding a cup of real soup, and you can't quite believe it's over. 81 days, 10 dead, 30 survivors who will never be whole again. But it's over. The nightmare is finally over. Except it's not. Not really. Because the nightmare isn't the house or the snow or the hunger. The nightmare is what you became, what you're capable of, what you learned about yourself. And that nightmare will follow you forever. You survived Blackmore. But Blackmore will never stop killing you. It'll just do it slowly, over decades, through nightmares and guilt and the weight of knowing exactly what you'd do to survive. You'll carry the dead with you, all 10 of them, their faces, their names, their last moments. And you'll wonder every day for the rest of your life, why them and not me? There's no answer, there never is. Just the brutal randomness of who lives and who dies. Just luck and timing, and the tiny choices that add up to survival or death. The rescuers prepare to evacuate you. The weather has turned, the thaw is starting. In a week, the roads will be passable. In 2 weeks, you'll be home. But you'll never really leave Blackmore. None of you will. Because some places don't let you go. Some experiences burn so deep they become part of your DNA. Some truths once learned can't be unlearned, and the truth is you're capable of anything. Given the right circumstances, the right disaster, you're capable of eating leather, of watching children die, of standing over corpses and calculating calories. You're capable of survival at any cost, and the cost is everything. Block 9, The Reckoning, 1,000 words. March 13th, and you're learning to be human again. It's harder than you expected. The rescuers set up a camp in the main hall, portable stoves, medical supplies, food, plain, carefully portioned, designed for starving bodies that can't process normal meals yet. Small amounts, the doctor from the village insists. His name is Patterson, and he's seen famine before. Your stomachs have shrunk. Too much food too fast will kill you just as surely as starvation. So you eat bread soaked in broth, a few spoonfuls at a time. Your body screams for more. Your mind knows better. Some people can't help themselves. They sneak extra portions, steal from the supplies, gorge. By evening, 2 of them are dead. Refeeding syndrome. The doctor explains it clinically. Electrolyte imbalance, cardiac failure, the body overwhelmed by sudden nutrition. After 81 days of starvation, food can kill you. It feels like a cosmic joke. The rescuers are documenting everything, writing reports, taking statements. Trying to understand what happened. The snow was unprecedented, Patterson explains. 73 consecutive days of snowfall. Temperatures below -10 for 2 months straight. It's a statistical impossibility. Except it happened. Why did it take so long to reach us? Someone demands. Angry, looking for blame. We tried, 3 times. Lost 2 men in the attempts. The drifts were 20 feet high. We had to wait for the thaw. People died waiting. People died trying to reach you. That silences the complaint. The rescuers found the horses first, butchered, frozen. They don't mention it, don't judge. They've seen worse. But when they find the bodies in the cold wing, 10 of them, wrapped in sheets, perfectly preserved, the mood changes. Who are they? Patterson asks. Mrs. Blackwell provides the list. Names, ages, causes of death. She's kept meticulous records. The rescuers examine each body, looking for evidence, wounds, signs of violence or worse. They find nothing. All the deaths are explicable. Disease, starvation, natural causes given the circumstances. That night the survivors gather in the dining room. Real food this time. Still small portions but warm soup, soft bread, cooked vegetables. It should feel celebratory. It feels like a funeral. You eat in silence. Everyone does. The joy of rescue has faded. What's left is the weight of what happened, what you did, what you became. Hargrove won't speak. He just stares at his bowl. He ate wallpaper until his intestines bled. He screams in his sleep now. Mrs. Ashworth hasn't stopped crying since they found her daughter's body, her child, dead at 7, because of a Christmas party, because of snow. The guilt is crushing her, visibly. She's aged 20 years in 3 months, and the Ashworths' marriage is over. You see it in the way they don't look at each other, don't speak. Mr. Ashworth wanted to show off his wealth. Instead, he created a tomb. On March 14th, they begin evacuating the survivors. You're too weak to walk the 6 miles to the village. Sleds are prepared, strong men to pull them. When it's your turn, you take one last look at Blackmore Hall, the house that was supposed to be paradise, now stripped bare. Furniture burned, walls scraped clean, windows broken. It looks like a war zone. It was. The journey to the village is surreal. The snow is melting. The road is visible in places. Mud and ice and rushing water where the drifts are collapsing. You reach the village by afternoon. Stone buildings, a church, an inn. People staring as the survivors arrive. Skeletal, haunted, barely alive. They've prepared rooms, beds with clean sheets, fires burning, more food, medical care. It feels like heaven. It feels like mockery. Because you don't deserve comfort, not after what you survived, not after what you did to survive. That night, in a warm bed for the first time in months, you can't sleep. The softness is wrong. The warmth is wrong. You're used to cold and hardness and constant vigilance. You get up, walk to the window, look out at the hills. Blackmore Hall is invisible from here, but you know where it is. Empty now, abandoned, already becoming a ghost. Eleanor finds you there. She can't sleep either. None of you can. They're going to investigate, she says quietly. Officially. There will be inquiries. They'll want to know everything. Everything? Everything we did, everything we ate, who died and how. We didn't eat the dead, you say. You stopped it before it got that far. But we thought about it. All of us, we stood on that edge. Thinking isn't doing. No. But it's close enough to haunt us. Over the next week, the investigations begin. Men from London arrive, officials, a magistrate, doctors. They interview everyone separately, cross-referencing stories. Looking for inconsistencies, they examine the bodies, perform autopsies, searching for evidence of violence, murder, cannibalism. They find none. All 10 deaths are ruled natural consequences of the disaster. The official report, published 3 months later, is clinical. The Christmas disaster of 1842-1843. Unprecedented meteorological phenomena. No evidence of criminal activity. All deaths attributable to natural causes. Natural causes. As if there's anything natural about eating leather and wallpaper, about watching children die, about nearly devouring corpses. But that's how history will record it. Clean, sanitized, acceptable. The survivors scatter. Most return home as soon as they're strong enough. They don't stay in touch. Don't write, don't visit. Because seeing each other means remembering. And remembering is unbearable. Mrs. Ashworth never leaves her London townhouse again. She dies 2 years later. Pneumonia officially, but everyone knows it was grief. Mr. Ashworth sells Blackmore Hall immediately, at a massive loss. No one wants it. The house is cursed now. It sits empty for years, then decades. Eventually, it's demolished. By 1900, there's nothing left but a foundation and local legends. Hargrove is committed to an asylum in 1845, dies there in 1852. The madness never left him. The vicar loses his faith, resigns his position, becomes a schoolteacher. When asked why he left the church, he says, "I prayed for 70 days, God didn't answer." Eleanor becomes a statistician, publishes papers on probability, risk assessment, survival mathematics. Her work is respected, influential, but she's still there, still in that library, still calculating who lives and who dies. You see her once, years later, at a lecture in London. "Do you ever think about it?" you ask. "Every day," she says, "every single day." "Do you regret it?" She's quiet. "I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret surviving." Even though 10 people didn't, especially because 10 people didn't. Someone had to live. Someone had to remember. Did their deaths mean something? She looks at you. "Are you alive?" "Yes." "Then yes." It's not comfort, but it's something. Block 10. The Survivors' Lives, 1,000 words, March 1845, 2 years later. And you're sitting in a London drawing room that smells like beeswax and money. The difference is, you're different. You look normal. You've regained the weight. Your hair grew back, the physical scars healed. The other scars didn't. You can't eat certain foods anymore. Fruitcake makes you nauseous. The smell of leather triggers something visceral. You avoid horse-drawn carriages. The sound of hooves makes your stomach clench. You don't attend social gatherings, not really. You go when required. You smile, you make conversation, but you're not present. Part of you is still in that frozen house. The others are the same. The survivors, the 30 who lived, you've kept track. Of the 30 survivors, 5 have died in 2 years. 2 suicides, 1 from alcoholism, 1 from melancholia, 1 from consumption. 25 left now. Several emigrated to America, Australia, anywhere without snow. Some married quickly, desperately, seeking connection, trying to prove they're still capable of normal things. Most of those marriages are failing. How do you explain why you hoard food? Why you wake up screaming? Why you count every calorie compulsively? You can't, so you don't. And the distance grows. A few found religion, not comfortable faith, something harder, evangelical. They're looking for absolution, for meaning, for some reason why they lived and others died. They won't find it. You know because you looked too. There's no reason. Just chaos and statistics and random cruelty. You've become a writer, a journalist. You write about disasters, shipwrecks, famines, industrial accidents. Your editors love it. You have such empathy, they say, such insight into human suffering. They don't know you're just writing the same story over and over. The Blackmore story. Different names, different locations, same arc. Comfort, disaster, descent, survival, aftermath. Always the question, what does it cost to survive? Always the answer, everything. One evening, you receive an invitation, a dinner party. Small. Intimate. The host is Eleanor, 6 others attend, all Blackmore survivors. It's intentional. The dinner is strange, everyone's too polite, too careful. The food is deliberately simple, nothing excessive, nothing triggering. But halfway through, someone jokes about the weather, about hoping it doesn't snow. The table goes silent. Then someone laughs, dark, bitter. Suddenly, everyone's laughing. Horrible, painful laughter that's more like crying. "I can't eat fruitcake anymore," one woman admits. "I hoarded bread for 6 months," a man confesses. "It went moldy, I kept it anyway." I have nightmares about being cold, another says. I sleep with 4 blankets. My wife thinks I'm insane. The confessions pour out. All the ways Blackmore broke you, changed you, made you into something that looks human but isn't quite right. Eleanor listens, then stands, raises her glass. To the dead, she says quietly, who don't have to remember. You all drink. And for the first time since the rescue, you feel understood. These people know they were there, they saw what you saw, did what you did, became what you became. After dinner, Eleanor pulls you aside. I'm writing a book, she says, about Blackmore. The truth, not the official report. Will anyone publish it? Probably not while we're alive. It's too ugly. Society doesn't want to know what people become when comfort disappears. So why write it? Because someone should know. Even if it's historians 100 years from now, someone should understand that civilization is thinner than we think. Will you mention names? No, I'll change everything, but the truth will be there. The book is never published in her lifetime. It surfaces decades later. Anonymous, undated. Scholars debate its authenticity for years, but you recognize every word. By 1850, you've stopped tracking the other survivors. Too many deaths, too much ongoing suffering. You focus on your own life. Your work, your survival. You never marry. The few relationships you attempt don't last. You can't quite connect anymore. In 1852, you receive news that Blackmore Hall has been demolished. The stones sold, the land cleared. You should feel relief. Instead, you feel loss. Because now it's only in your head, only in memory. And memory fades. Eventually, there will be no one left who was there. And the story will become legend. Sanitized. Romantic. How they all survived on cake and good British spirit. The truth, the leather and wallpaper and near cannibalism and 10 corpses will be forgotten. History prefers comfortable lies. On Christmas Eve 1855, 13 years after the disaster, you're alone. You've avoided Christmas since Blackmore. The decorations, the forced cheer, the abundance. But tonight, you light a candle, pour wine, and you say their names. All 10 who died, one by one. Slowly, remembering their faces. It's not prayer. You don't believe in prayer anymore. It's just remembering. Bearing witness, making sure that for one more year someone knows they existed. When you finish, you blow out the candle, drink the wine, go to bed. Tomorrow is just another day. You survived. They didn't. That's the only truth that matters, and it will never stop hurting. December 1865. 23 years later, winter comes again. The snow comes early, just light at first, but then heavier. The Thames starts freezing. Coal shipments slow, and you feel it. The old panic, the old terror, it's just snow, normal snow, nothing like the Pennines, nothing like Blackmore. But your body doesn't know that. Your body remembers. You start hoarding, can't help it. Every time you leave the house, you buy extra food. Bread, tinned goods, dried fruits. You stack them in your pantry, your bedroom, under your bed. Your housekeeper notices. Sir, we have plenty. Just buy more, you snap. Too harsh, you apologize. But you don't stop. By mid-December, you have enough food to survive months. Rationally, you know this is excessive. London isn't going to run out. The snow will melt. But the rational part of your brain isn't in control. The part that survived Blackmore is. And that part knows. You can never have too much food. On December 22nd, the anniversary, you have a panic attack. Heart racing. Can't breathe. Convinced you're dying. Your doctor comes. Finds nothing physically wrong. It's nerves, he says. Anxiety. Have you been under stress? You laugh. It sounds hysterical. It's the snow, the anniversary. I was trapped once. Long ago. Trapped? When? You've never told him. Never told anyone who wasn't there. But it pours out now. Blackmore. The blizzard. 81 days. The deaths. The leather. The near cannibalism. All of it. He listens. When you finish, he's quiet. That must have been difficult. Difficult, you repeat. The understatement is almost funny. Yes. Difficult. He prescribes laudanum, for sleep, for nerves, just until the snow melts. You take it. It helps. Barely. The dreams still come. On Christmas Eve, you stay in. Alone. Doors locked. Curtains drawn. Fires burning in every room. You're safe. You're warm. You have food for months. You're not trapped. But you can't shake the feeling that you are. That you never really left. That Blackmore was just the beginning. The snow in London melts by New Year's. The panic subsides. Life returns to normal. But you're not normal. You know it. Your doctor knows it. Anyone who pays attention knows it. Blackmore didn't just happen 23 years ago. It's still happening. It will always be happening. In January, you receive a letter from Eleanor. "I'm dying," she writes. "Consumption. Months left. I wanted you to know. And I wanted to ask. Do you still think about it?" You write back immediately. "Every day. And I've stopped trying to forget. Forgetting feels like betraying them." Her response comes 2 weeks later, shakier handwriting. "Good, I was afraid I was the only one still carrying them, but if you're carrying them too, then maybe their deaths meant something." It's the last letter. She dies in March, 53 years old, officially tuberculosis. But you know better. She died from Blackmore, just 23 years late. At her funeral, you see 3 other survivors. You recognize them instantly. The way they hold themselves, the way they scan rooms, the way they stand near exits. After the service, you speak briefly. "Do you ever—" One starts. "Every day," you interrupt. They nod. "Me too." That's the entire conversation. But it's enough. By 1870, most survivors are dead. Suicides, disease, accidents. The ones left are scattered, unreachable. Maybe you're the last one. You're not sure. If you're the last, then when you die, Blackmore dies with you. The truth, the memory, all of it, gone, unless you write it down. So you do. Not for publication, not for anyone living, but for the future, for whoever finds it. You write about the cold, the hunger, the slow descent, the moment-by-moment decisions that add up to survival or death, the moral calculations that haunt you decades later. You write Eleanor's story, the leather, the wallpaper, the near cannibalism, the gunshot, the bodies, all of it. Unflinching, honest, raw. When you finish, you seal it, lock it in a safe deposit box, with instructions not to be opened until 50 years after your death. Why 50 years? The bank manager asks. Because anyone who might be hurt by the truth will be dead by then, and anyone who reads it will understand, this could happen to you. And what was that? You look at him. Survivors. At any cost. He doesn't understand. He's never been hungry, never been cold, never watched people die while doing nothing because there was nothing to do. He's lucky. You hope he stays lucky. Because the alternative is Blackmore. Block 11. The second winter. 1,000 words. March 1878. 36 years after Blackmore. And you're dying. Cancer. The doctors are polite but clear. Months, not years. Your body is finally giving up. Finally letting go of the survival instinct that kept you alive longer than you wanted to be alive. You're 64. Old by Victorian standards. You've lived a full life. Accomplished things. Written things. Mattered in small ways. But none of it feels real. The only thing that feels real still, always, is Blackmore. You're in your study. Spring sun through the windows. Warm. Bright. Everything Blackmore wasn't. There's a knock. Your housekeeper. "Sir, there's a young woman here. Says it's important. About something that happened long ago." You're too tired to be curious, but you say yes anyway. She enters. Early 20s. Well-dressed, nervous. She's carrying a leather journal you recognize immediately. Eleanor's journal. The one she kept during Blackmore. "My name is Margaret Eleanor Harrison," she says. "Eleanor was my aunt. She left this to me when she died, with instructions to find you, to show you, to ask if it's true, if any of it really happened the way she wrote it." You look at the journal. You haven't seen it in over 30 years. May I? She hands it over. You open it. Eleanor's precise handwriting. Dates, names, events, calculations. You read slowly. Remembering. Each entry is a knife. December 22nd, 1842. Snow began. Roads impassable. January 2nd, first death. Young banker. Froze attempting escape. January 15th. Discovered cakes in cellar. Approximately 500 lbs. February 10th. First horse slaughtered. February 28th. Officer attempted to cannibalize deceased. Shot by EH non-fatal wound. Subsequent infection. Died March 3rd, March 12th. Rescue arrived. 30 survivors of original 41. It's all there. Every terrible moment. At the back, Eleanor added commentary, written years later. We like to think civilization is solid, she wrote. That humans are fundamentally decent. Blackmore taught me otherwise. We're always 3 days from barbarism, 3 missed meals from murder, 3 weeks from eating our dead. Not because we're evil, because we're alive. And life wants to continue, no matter the cost. You close the journal, hand it back. It's true, you tell Margaret. Every word, every death, everything. But the official reports lied. Not deliberately, but they cleaned it up, made it palatable, turned it into a tragedy instead of what it really was. Which was a case study in how quickly we become unrecognizable to ourselves. Margaret is quiet, processing. My aunt wrote that you were the strongest one there. I made decisions that kept me alive. Some other people benefited. Some didn't. She thought you were a hero. Eleanor was wrong. There were no heroes at Blackmore, just survivors and corpses. The only difference was luck. It still haunts you. It's not a question. Every day, you confirm. Every single day for 36 years, and it will haunt me until I die, which should be soon. I'm sorry. Don't be. I survived. That's more than 10 others can say. She leaves the journal with you. Aunt Eleanor wanted you to have it, said you'd know what to do with it. After she's gone, you read it cover to cover. It takes hours. By the end, you're crying. Not from sadness. From recognition. From relief that someone else remembered exactly. You add the journal to your own account, the one in the safe deposit box. Now there are 2 testimonies, 2 versions of the truth. On April 15th, you make your final preparation. You update your will. Your papers, all of them including the Blackmore accounts, go to the British Library, sealed for 50 years after your death. But sir, if they're historically important, they're too honest, you interrupt. Society isn't ready, maybe in 50 years, maybe never, but they need to exist. He doesn't argue. On May 3rd, you write your final letter to no one, to everyone, to whoever finds the accounts. Dear reader, you write, if you're reading this, I'm long dead. So is everyone who was at Blackmore. We're all ghosts now. But you're not. You're alive, probably comfortable, fed, warm, secure. You think civilization is permanent, that humanity is solid, that you'd never do what we did. You're wrong. Under the right circumstances, the right disaster, you would do exactly what we did. You'd eat leather. You'd steal from the dying. You'd stand over corpses and calculate calories. You'd cross every line you think is uncrossable. Not because you're evil, because you're human. And humans are built to survive at any cost. Blackmore didn't make us monsters. It revealed that we'd always been monsters. We just had enough food and warmth to pretend otherwise. I don't tell you this to frighten you. I tell you this to prepare you. Because disaster will come. Maybe not in your lifetime, but eventually. Will you be strong enough to remain human? Or will you discover, as we did, that human is more flexible than you thought? I can't answer that. I can only tell you it's possible to survive and lose yourself completely, to live and die at the same time. We survived Blackmore, but Blackmore never stopped killing us. Remember that. When your comfort disappears, when your morality is tested, when you're choosing between death and degradation. Remember, survival has a price, and you'll pay it for the rest of your life. However long that is. Signed, a survivor, Maitre, 1878. You seal the letter, add it to the collection, and then you sleep. For the first time in 36 years, you sleep without dreaming. Block 12, The Archive, 1,000 words, June 1928. 50 years after your death. And the seals are broken. A young archivist named Thomas Whitmore receives the collection. 3 boxes, leather-bound journals, loose papers, letters, perfectly preserved. The instructions, catalogue everything, make it available to researchers, preserve the testimony of the Christmas disaster of 1842-1843. Thomas has heard of Blackmore. Everyone has. A footnote, a curiosity. Worst winter storm in Pennine history. 11 deaths, 30 survivors. A sad story, but hardly unique. He opens the first box expecting routine documentation. What he finds makes him sit down hard. Your testimony, unflinching, detailed, horrifying. Eleanor's journal, scientific, precise, damning, letters between survivors, confessions, breakdowns, suicides explained, medical reports, the doctor's private notes about starvation, refeeding syndrome, psychological trauma, and photographs, taken after rescue. You can see it in the survivors' faces, the hollowness, the trauma, the way they don't quite look human anymore. Thomas reads for 6 hours straight, forgets to eat, doesn't notice when his supervisor checks on him twice. By evening, he's shaking, not from cold, from recognition. Because 1928 is 10 years after the Great War. Thomas is a veteran. He served at the Somme. He knows what it means to survive something that changes you fundamentally, to come home broken, to carry dead friends forever. Blackmore wasn't warfare, but it was war, against nature, against hunger, against the parts of yourself that want to live no matter the cost. He writes a memo. The Blackmore materials are extraordinary. They need special handling. This isn't just historical documentation. This is psychological testimony. These people survived, but they never recovered. His supervisor reads the materials, then calls a meeting. Within weeks, the Blackmore collection becomes one of the most studied disaster testimonies in British history. Psychologists want it. Sociologists want it. Medical researchers want it. A researcher named Dr. Patricia Morrison writes the first major study in 1931, Survival and Identity, Psychological Consequences of the Blackmore Disaster. Her findings are revolutionary. Post-traumatic stress isn't limited to combat. Civilian disasters produce identical symptoms. Survival guilt is real, measurable, often permanent. Extreme hunger produces specific psychological changes that persist long after refeeding. Moral injury, damage from crossing ethical lines, can be more debilitating than physical trauma. The Blackmore survivors, she concludes, suffered from what would later be called complex PTSD. They survived the disaster, but they never survived the surviving. The materials become famous, referenced in psychology texts, studied in universities, used to train disaster response teams. Understand Blackmore, the training manuals say, and you understand what happens when systems collapse. In 1935, a playwright adapts your testimony. It's called The Long Winter, and it's brutal, unflinching. The audience sits in cold, dark theaters watching characters slowly starve, slowly descend, slowly lose humanity. Critics hate it. Too depressing, too dark. Why show us the worst of human nature? But audiences pack the theaters because people need to know, need to understand. Need to confront the question, could I survive that? And what would I become? The play runs for 6 months in London, then tours England, then Europe. Everywhere the same reaction, horror, fascination, recognition. Because by 1935, everyone's seen disaster. The Great War, Spanish flu, economic collapse, the rise of fascism. People understand that civilization is fragile, that comfort is temporary. Blackmore isn't just history, it's a warning. During World War II, the Blackmore materials are studied by military planners. How do you keep soldiers human during siege warfare, during starvation, during prolonged isolation? The answer, you can't. Not really. You can only minimize damage, provide just enough food, just enough hope, just enough structure. Remove any of those and people become what the Blackmore survivors became. Desperate animals who look human but aren't quite right anymore. After the war, the testimonies are used in Holocaust studies. The camps, the starvation, the impossible choices, the way humans break and reform and never quite fit back together. Camp survivors read your testimony and weep, because finally someone understands. Someone documented the truth. Someone said, surviving changes you permanently, and that's not weakness, that's reality. By 1950, the Blackmore materials are among the most requested items in the British Library. Researchers from around the world want access. Students write dissertations. Documentaries are filmed. Your voice, sealed away in 1878, certain no one would care, echoes across decades, across continents, across disasters you never imagined. Hiroshima survivors read Eleanor's journal, recognized the calculations, the rationing, the way you reduce humans to calories. Famine victims read your letters, recognize the hunger, the desperation, the shame of surviving when others didn't. War veterans read the final testimony, recognized the haunting, the way trauma doesn't fade, just becomes baseline, the way you're never really at peace again. And they all think, thank God someone wrote it down. Thank God someone told the truth. In 1965, on the 123rd anniversary, a memorial is erected near where Blackmore Hall stood. A simple stone marker, no names, just words. In memory of those who endured the winter of 1842-1843. 11 died, 30 survived. All were changed forever. At the dedication, there's a reading from your final letter, the one about survival's price. An old woman in the crowd starts crying. She's not related to anyone at Blackmore. She's a Holocaust survivor, but she knows, she understands. That's what you wanted. For someone to understand. For the truth to outlive the comfort of lies. Mission accomplished. Your words survived. And in surviving, they've saved people. Not from disasters. From the loneliness of surviving disasters. From thinking they're broken when they're really just changed. That's not redemption. You didn't earn redemption, you just survived. You just documented. But maybe documentation is its own form of survival. Maybe writing the truth is how trauma becomes bearable. Not healed, just bearable. Maybe that's enough. Block 13. The Modern Excavation. 1,000 words. October 2019. 177 years after Blackmore, and they're digging up the foundation. A team from the University of Manchester, archaeologists, anthropologists, and a trauma psychologist named Dr. Sarah Chen, who specializes in historical disaster sites. The land belongs to the National Trust now. They're planning a heritage site, a museum about Victorian disasters. Blackmore is the centerpiece. We want to tell the real story, the project director explains, not the sanitized version, the truth about what happened when civilization collapsed. Sarah Chen has read your testimony, all of it. She's written 3 papers on Blackmore survivor psychology, but she's never been here, never stood on the actual ground where it happened. The site is just a field now, sheep pasture, rolling Pennine hills, beautiful in a stark, unforgiving way, the kind of beauty that can kill you. They start with ground-penetrating radar, mapping the foundation, the cellar system, the location of rooms, the courtyard where the horses were slaughtered. Then they excavate, carefully, methodically, documenting everything. The foundation is mostly intact, stone walls underground. The cellar system is extensive, larger than documents suggested. Multiple chambers, storage rooms, wine cellar, the cold room where bodies were kept. They find artifacts, hundreds of them, buttons, broken china, rusted utensils, remains of furniture, charred wood from the fires, pieces of leather, preserved in cold, damp soil, shoes, belts, book covers. They find them in the fireplaces. The leather, exactly where you said it would be, cut into strips, partially burned, evidence of desperate measures you documented. In one smaller chamber, they find scratches on the wall. words carved into stone with a knife or nail. Day 47. Still alive. God forgive us. January. No food, no hope. They're dying. We're next. And one that makes Sarah stop breathing. If you find this... No, we tried. We tried so hard. The excavation team is silent. These aren't just artifacts, these are voices. Testimony carved by people who thought no one would ever know. But they weren't forgotten. You made sure of that. They find the courtyard, test the soil, and find what they're looking for. Blood residue. Animal blood. Horse blood. Exactly where the slaughter happened. Exactly where you said. Every detail of your testimony is confirmed. Every date, every death, every desperate meal. You told the truth. Complete. Unflinching. Accurate. But the most significant find comes from the cold room. The bodies were removed in 1843. Taken to the village for burial. But the room preserved something else. Scratch marks. On the door. On the inside. Someone clawed at that door. Desperate. Panicked. Trying to get out. The team analyzes them. The marks are shallow. Weak. Made by someone with no strength left. Sarah studies them for hours. Then checks historical records. Cross-references your testimony. And realizes these marks were made after the rescue, days after. When rescuers were focused on survivors. When no one was checking the cold room carefully. Someone was locked in there, accidentally or deliberately, and they died trying to get out. It's not in your testimony, not in Eleanor's journal, not in any survivor accounts, which means either no one knew or everyone knew and no one admitted it. Sarah writes in her field notes, possible 12th victim, unrecorded death. Circumstances unknown, further investigation required. The discovery makes international news. Lost victim of Blackmore disaster discovered 177 years later. The media speculates, murder, accident, a servant trapped and forgotten in the chaos. Sarah doesn't speculate, she just documents, measures, analyzes, tries to give this unknown person the same respect you gave the 11 known dead. A name, a story, recognition that they existed. The excavation continues through November. They find more evidence of desperate survival. Wallpaper remnants with teeth marks, plaster scraped from walls, wooden furniture chopped into kindling, expensive, beautiful furniture destroyed for heat. They find a child's shoe, small, delicate. It breaks the team's hearts because they know whose it was. Mrs. Ashworth's daughter, the 7-year-old who died of fever. That shoe ends up in the museum, in a glass case, with her name, with her story, a small life that mattered. In December, they finish the excavation. The findings fill 3 academic papers and form the core of the new museum exhibition. But Sarah writes something else, a personal essay, published in The Guardian, titled, What Blackmore Teaches Us About Survival. I've studied the Blackmore disaster for 6 years, she writes. Read every document, analyzed every psychological profile, excavated the physical site, and I've reached a conclusion that disturbs me. We're not ready. Not for climate disaster, not for pandemic, not for the collapse of supply chains and social systems, because we think we're different, more civilized than the Victorians, more evolved, more capable of maintaining morality under pressure. Blackmore says otherwise. These weren't bad people. They were wealthy, educated, presumably moral citizens. They went to church. They had families. They lived lives of comfort. And within 3 weeks, they were eating wallpaper. Within 6 weeks, considering cannibalism. Within 12 weeks, irrevocably traumatized. Not because they were weak, because they were human. And humans without food, without warmth, without hope, become something else. Something that looks human, but operates on pure survival instinct. We saw it in concentration camps, in siege warfare, in famine zones, everywhere humans are pushed past limits. Blackmore is just the best documented example because the survivors had courage to tell the truth, to admit what they became, to warn us. Are we listening? Climate change is accelerating. Supply chains are fragile. Our comfort is predicated on systems that could collapse faster than we imagine. What happens when they do? When your city runs out of food, when the power grid fails, when help isn't coming, you'll do what the Blackmore survivors did. You'll eat anything, cross any line. Survive by any means necessary. Not because you're a monster, because you're alive and life is relentless. The question isn't whether you do it. The question is, can you live with what you'd become afterward? The Blackmore survivors couldn't. Most died within 20 years. Survival isn't victory. Sometimes it's just prolonged dying. Remember that. The essay goes viral. Millions of reads, thousands of comments. Block 14, The Pandemic Mirror, 1,000 words. The museum opens in March 2020. Perfect timing. Just as COVID-19 begins spreading globally, just as the world enters lockdown, just as people start hoarding toilet paper and food. Suddenly, Blackmore isn't ancient history. It's a mirror. People stuck in their homes, isolated, scared, watching supply chains strain. They understand. They feel it. The fear of being trapped, the uncertainty of how long it will last, the primal need to hoard resources. The museum's virtual tour gets millions of views. People touring the reconstructed rooms, reading the testimonies, staring at the artifacts, the leather strips, the child's shoe, the scratched walls, and understanding. This could be us. Sarah gives dozens of interviews, always the same questions. Could it happen again? Are we at risk? What should we do? Her answer is always the same. It's already happening. Somewhere in the world right now, people are facing Blackmore conditions. Siege cities, famine zones, climate disasters. The question isn't if it will happen to you, it's when. Not comfort, not reassurance, just truth. The truth you spent your life documenting. The truth Eleanor died preserving. The truth that 11 people died to teach. Survival has a price, and the price is permanent. In December 2020, during the pandemic's darkest months, Sarah visits the Blackmore site alone. The museum is closed. The excavation is complete. It's just empty fields again, cold, windswept, beautiful and terrible. She stands where the dining room used to be, where you all ate that first Christmas dinner. Oysters and beef and wine, laughing, comfortable, completely unaware that death was already outside, accumulating silently. She thinks about the scratches on the cold room door. The unknown 12th victim, the person no one remembered, lost to history until she found them. And she makes a decision. She's going to find out who it was. Give them a name, a story, recognition, because that's what you did. What Eleanor did. What all the survivors did by telling the truth. You made sure the dead weren't forgotten, that their suffering mattered, that someone, somewhere, would remember and learn. Sarah will continue that work, for the known 11, for the unknown 12th, for all the forgotten victims of forgotten disasters, so that when the next Blackmore comes, and it will come, people will remember, people will understand, people will know what survival really costs. The research takes months. Sarah combs through employment records, servant registries, census data, parish records, cross-referencing dates, ages, positions. Finally, in May 2021, she finds her. Margaret Thorne, 22 years old, kitchen maid, employed at Blackmore Hall for 3 years, listed on the household roster in December 1842, not listed among the survivors in March 1843, not listed among the dead either. Just gone. Sarah digs deeper, finds a letter from Margaret's sister, dated April 1843. We've received no word about Margaret. The Ashworths say she wasn't with the household when they were trapped, but her belongings were found at the estate. Where is she? What happened? No one ever answered. The letter was filed away, forgotten. Margaret became a ghost, not dead enough to mourn, not alive enough to find. Until now. Sarah publishes her findings in August 2021. The 12th victim, Margaret Thorne, and the hidden cost of Blackmore. The paper goes viral, not just academically, publicly, because Margaret's story resonates. She was invisible in life, a servant, poor, female, Irish, and she remained invisible in death, trapped, forgotten, erased, until someone cared enough to look. The museum adds a new exhibit, Margaret's story. Her photograph found finally in a family album. A young woman with serious eyes and calloused hands. Someone who worked, someone who mattered, someone who died alone and afraid while the people she served were being rescued upstairs. The exhibit includes the scratch marks, preserved, displayed behind glass, evidence of her final moments, her desperate attempt to escape, to live, to matter. People come from around the world to see it, to stand before those scratch marks, to bear witness, and many of them cry. Because Margaret is every forgotten victim, every person who dies alone, every tragedy that gets buried because it's inconvenient, every truth that gets erased because it's uncomfortable. By 2022, Blackmore has become something larger than a historical disaster. It's become a framework, a lens through which people understand modern crises. When Afghanistan falls and people are trapped at the airport, someone references Blackmore. This is what happens when systems collapse and people are abandoned. When Ukraine is sieged and people are trapped in cities without food or power, someone references Blackmore. This is what happens when humans are pushed past limits. When climate disasters intensify and communities are cut off for weeks, someone references Blackmore. This is what happens when we ignore warnings until it's too late. Your testimony, written in 1878, sealed for 50 years, released in 1928, studied for 90 years, has become a Rosetta Stone for understanding human behavior under extreme stress. Not because it's unique, because it's honest. You didn't romanticize survival. You didn't pretend to be heroic. You just documented what happened. What you did, what you became. And that honesty is what makes it valuable, because people can see themselves in it, can recognize their own capacity for desperation, can understand that they're not uniquely strong or uniquely weak, just human. And humans, under the right circumstances, are capable of anything. Sarah Chen retires in 2023. She's 77. She spent 15 years studying Blackmore, writing about it, teaching about it, making sure the truth survives. Her final paper is titled Blackmore at 180, What We've Learned and What We Keep Forgetting. In it, she argues that humanity hasn't learned the lesson. We keep making the same mistakes, building systems that are too fragile, assuming comfort is permanent, ignoring warnings, and then acting surprised when disaster strikes. Blackmore survivors spent decades trying to warn us, she writes. They documented everything, explained everything, made it impossible to claim we didn't know. And yet we keep building Blackmore Halls, keep throwing Christmas parties in the Pennines, keep assuming we're immune to the laws of nature. We're not. The snow will always fall, the food will always run out, the rescue will always come too late. And when it does, we'll discover what the Blackmore survivors discovered. We're capable of anything, and the cost of that capability is everything. We can't prevent Blackmore, but we can prepare for it. Psychologically, emotionally, morally. We can accept that survival isn't victory, that living has a price, that trauma is normal, not weakness. We can forgive ourselves in advance for what will become. And we can remember the dead, all of them, the 11 known, the 12th unknown, the countless unnamed. Because memory is the only thing that survives every disaster. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Block 15, The Inheritance, 1,000 words, December 22nd, 2042. Exactly 200 years after the first snow fell on Blackmore Hall, and the world is burning. Not literally, not everywhere, but close enough. Climate collapse has accelerated. Crop failures are routine. Supply chains are fractured. Coastal cities are flooding. Inland regions are experiencing weather extremes that would have seemed impossible 50 years ago. The Pennines, ironically, are doing better than most places, but the weather is unpredictable, violent. Storm systems that appear without warning and trap entire communities. It's happened 3 times this year alone. Villages cut off, rescues delayed, deaths from exposure and isolation. Blackmore isn't an anomaly anymore. It's becoming routine. Dr. Sarah Chen is 96 now, confined to a wheelchair, mostly deaf, but mentally sharp as ever. Still working, still researching, still teaching. Today, there's a ceremony at the Blackmore Memorial Site, the bicentennial. Survivors of modern disasters are gathered. Climate refugees, pandemic survivors, war refugees, people who've lived through collapse and emerged broken but alive. Sarah is giving the keynote, her final public appearance everyone knows. She's been preparing this speech for months. She's wheeled onto the platform where Blackmore Hall once stood. 200 people in the audience, thousands watching online globally. She begins, her voice amplified, steady despite her age. 200 years ago today it started snowing. Just a light dusting. The people at Blackmore Hall had no idea that snow would keep falling for 73 days, that they'd be trapped for 81 days. That 11 would die. That 30 would survive carrying trauma forever. They thought they were safe. They thought they were prepared. They were wrong. And so are we. I've spent my career studying Blackmore. And the lesson is simple. We're not ready. We've never been ready, we'll never be ready. Because being ready would require accepting that we're fragile, that civilization is thin, that any of us could become what they became. And we don't want to accept that. In the past 20 years, I've interviewed hundreds of disaster survivors, and they all tell the same story the Blackmore survivors told. First you're shocked, then you're optimistic, then you're coping, then you're desperate. Then you're changing, crossing lines you never thought you'd cross, and finally you're surviving. But the person who survives isn't the person who started. The Blackmore survivors documented this transformation. They gave us a roadmap, a warning. Are we listening? Look around. Climate collapse, resource wars, mass migration, pandemic after pandemic, supply chain failures. The systems we depend on are fracturing. And when they fully collapse, not if, when, we'll face the same choices. What will we choose? Most of us will survive, physically. Humans are remarkably resilient. But most of us won't recover, psychologically, morally, spiritually. The trauma of surviving by crossing your own ethical lines, that's permanent. That's what destroyed the Blackmore survivors. Not the hunger, not the cold, the shame of what they became. Is there any way to avoid that? To survive and stay human? Maybe, if we prepare differently. Not just stockpiling resources, but preparing mentally. Accepting that we'll be tested, that we'll be pushed to our limits, that we'll have to make impossible choices, and forgiving ourselves in advance. Because guilt is what kills you after survival. Guilt is what made the Blackmore survivors die slowly for decades after they escaped. They thought they were monsters. They weren't. They were humans in impossible circumstances, doing what humans do, surviving. There's no shame in that. There's no guilt in that. There's only the reality of what survival costs. The 11 people who died at Blackmore aren't heroes. The 30 who survived aren't villains. They're just people who faced disaster and responded as humans respond. Some died, some lived, all were changed, all mattered. We remember them not to judge them, but to learn from them, to understand ourselves through their experience, to prepare for the moment when we face our own Blackmore, because it's coming. Maybe not this winter, maybe not next, but it's coming. Climate collapse ensures it. System fragility guarantees it. Human nature demands it. And when it comes, remember Blackmore. Remember that survival is possible. Remember that trauma is inevitable. Remember that you're not alone. Remember that countless others have faced this before and came out the other side, broken but alive. Remember that being alive is enough, that surviving is enough, that you don't have to be a hero, you just have to be human. Even if being human means becoming something you don't recognize. That's the inheritance Blackmore left us. Not comfort, not hope, just truth. And truth is the only thing that survives every disaster. 200 years ago, a group of people went to a Christmas party. They expected joy, they got horror. They expected comfort. They got collapse. They expected to leave in 2 weeks. They left in 12 weeks, changed, broken, haunted. But they left us something. They left us their testimony, their honesty, their warning. They said, this is what we became, this is what you could become, this is the price of survival. Prepare, forgive, remember. And when your snow begins to fall, and it will, know that you're not the first, you're not alone, you're not a monster. You're just human, facing what humans have always faced, doing what humans have always done, surviving at any cost, and living with that cost forever. The survivor whose testimony started all this died in 1878, 164 years ago, but their words are still here, still teaching, still warning. Eleanor died in 1868, but her journal survives, her calculations, her brutal honesty. Margaret Thorne died forgotten in 1843, but now we know her name, her story, her final desperate moments. All the dead are still here, in memory, in testimony, in the scratches on cold room doors and the exhibits in museums and the papers written by researchers who care. Death doesn't erase you. Forgetting does. And we refuse to forget. That's our inheritance, that's our responsibility, that's our gift to the future. When the next Blackmore comes, and it will come in 1,000 different forms, people will remember this one. They'll read the testimonies. They'll study the psychology. They'll understand what's happening to them. And maybe that understanding will make the burden lighter. Not gone. Just lighter. That's all we can offer. All we've ever been able to offer. The truth. The memory. The recognition that you're not alone in your suffering. 200 years. 11 known dead. 1 forgotten victim finally remembered. 30 survivors who never recovered. Generations of researchers and historians and psychologists trying to understand. And what have we learned? That humans are fragile and resilient. That civilization is temporary. That comfort is an illusion. That disaster reveals who we really are. That we're capable of terrible things and beautiful things, and mostly just desperate things. That survival is not the same as victory. That living is not the same as being alive. That trauma doesn't heal. It just becomes part of your architecture. And that remembering matters, documenting matters, telling the truth matters. Even when the truth is ugly, especially when the truth is ugly. So, we remember Blackmore. We study it. We teach it. We preserve it. Not because it was unique, because it was honest. Not because it was heroic, because it was human. Not because it offers solutions, because it asks the right questions. What would you do? What would you become? What would you pay to survive? And could you live with yourself afterward? We can't answer those questions for you, no one can. You'll only know when you're there, when your snow is falling, when your food is running out, when your choices narrow to the unbearable. But we can tell you, others have been there. Others have faced it. Others have survived it. And they left you their testimony, their warning, their truth. Use it. Learn from it. Prepare with it. And when your Blackmore comes, remember, you're not the first. You won't be the last. You're just the latest in a long line of humans facing the impossible and doing what humans do. Surviving. At any cost. With consequences that last forever. That's the inheritance. That's the lesson. That's the truth that survives 200 years and will survive 200 more. We are not as strong as we think. We are not as civilized as we pretend. We are not as safe as we feel. We are 3 days from barbarism. 3 weeks from desperation. 3 months from trauma that never heals. And knowing that, truly accepting it, is the only preparation that matters. Thank you. Remember the dead. Forgive the living. Prepare for the snow. It always comes. It always will. And when it does, you'll understand everything the Blackmore survivors tried to tell us. Everything, Sarah finishes. The silence is absolute. No applause, just recognition, understanding. The weight of 200 years of testimony settling on modern shoulders. She's wheeled off the platform, exhausted, satisfied. She's done what she set out to do. Preserved the truth. passed it forward, made sure the dead are remembered. That night, Sarah Chen dies in her sleep, peacefully. Finally released from the burden of carrying Blackmore forward, but the testimony survives your words, Eleanor's journal, Margaret's name, all of it, preserved, protected, passed to the next generation of researchers and survivors and humans trying to understand what they're capable of. The snow falls that night, light, just a dusting, like 200 years ago, like it always does. And somewhere someone looks out their window and thinks, how long will this last? And somewhere someone reads your testimony and understands, longer than you think, and the cost will be everything. But you'll survive. Most of you will survive. And you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you hadn't. That's Blackmore, that's the inheritance, that's the truth that echoes across centuries, forever relevant, forever terrifying, forever true. The snow falls. It always falls. And we're always 3 days from discovering what we really are. Human, all too human, and all the horror that implies. The Blackmore disaster of 1842-1843 claimed 11 lives during the event. It claimed 20 more in the decades after. Of the 30 survivors, 3 lived past 60. The house was demolished in 1852. The site remained empty until 2019. The testimonies, sealed for 50 years, released in 1928, remain the most detailed accounts of civilian survival trauma ever documented. They're studied in universities worldwide. They inform disaster response protocols, they warn us. Margaret Thorne, the 12th victim, was finally identified in 2021, 178 years after she died alone, trapped, forgotten. Now we remember her. We remember all of them. Because memory is the only thing that survives every disaster, and the only thing that might save us from the next one. Subscribe if uncomfortable truths are better than comfortable lies. The snow is always coming, might as well be ready.